European giants AC Milan are back in the Champions League for the first time in 8 seasons, and their first game in this year's Champions League saw them travel to Anfield to take on Liverpool. This video will break down the key tactical and analytical insights that we got from this high-profile game. Liverpool managed to defeat AC Milan 3-2 on the night. Fikayo Tomori's own goal was the opener. However, Liverpool did miss a penalty as well before Ante Rebic and Brahim Diaz scored twice on the stroke of half-time to give the home side a real scare. However, Mohamed Salah and Jordan Henderson scored in the second half to give Liverpool a win. In this video, we will look at Liverpool's fast start that really unnerved AC Milan, their rotations down the right flank, with Trent Alexander-Arnold playing a key part in all of those moves. We will also look at AC Milan's poor structure on and off the ball, as well as break down both of Milan's goals with respect to where Liverpool's defensive strategy went wrong as well. But before we get into all of that, let's have a quick look at the lineups on the night. Jurgen Klopp sent out his team in their familiar 4-3-3 shape with a few changes. Divock Origi made his first start for the club in many a month, while Joel Matip and Joe Gomez were the preferred central defensive pairing, and Fabinho, Jordan Henderson and Naby Keita played in midfield. For AC Milan, it was a 4-2-3-1 shape, with Davide Calabria captaining the side from right back. Zlatan Ibrahimovic was injured, so Ante Rebic led the line. Liverpool started really fast and off the blocks here. They had 13 shots in the first 15 minutes of the game, which shows just how they were able to pin AC Milan back. AC Milan were unable to cope with this pressure, and Liverpool's rotations across the pitch were too much for the away side to handle, as we will see in the images that follow. This is a good example of the rotations that I was talking about. Diogo Jota was nominally playing on the left-hand side of the front three, but over here, as you can see, he drops into midfield, into almost a central midfield position, which gives him the space to receive the ball from Andrew Robertson and turn and run at the Milan defence, because they have not managed to pick up this rotation from the Portuguese forward. Also note that it's just the 3rd minute of the game, so Liverpool were up right from the start. As you can see, Jota runs right through the centre of the Milan midfield and is able to pass to Robertson out on the left flank. Also notice just how narrow the AC Milan defence is here, which gives Robertson that space to charge into and allows Jota to pass to him quite easily as well. Robertson then advances and crosses into the box for Divock Origi, who takes a first-time shot, but that shot is not good enough. He takes it with his toe rather than the centre of his foot, and it goes out for a throw-in rather than it being on target, but this was an early reminder of Liverpool's threat down the flanks. We can also see how their rotations work down the right flank. Here, Naby Keita switches the ball out to Alexander-Arnold, who is free on the right. The key part here, as we will see later on, is the positioning of Jordan Henderson and Mohamed Salah. These three players, Salah, Henderson and Alexander-Arnold, kept rotating their positions throughout the night, and this proved to be quite a headache for the AC Milan defence, as they were unable to pick up the right player at the right time and often gave Liverpool the space to run into behind. As Alexander-Arnold receives the ball and advances up the pitch, we can see that Salah is in a central position and Henderson is unmarked deeper. The three are able to play a quick exchange of passes between them, and the pass back to Henderson means that Franck Kessié, the AC Milan midfielder, is forced to come out to cover Henderson as the arrows show. What this does is that it pushes the Milan side a little bit further up the pitch, especially the back line, and as you can see over here, Jordan Henderson then lays the ball, after laying the ball back to Trent Alexander-Arnold, makes a run into the space highlighted in the Milan penalty area with a huge gap between the Milan defenders. However, it's just the 2nd minute of the game and Alexander-Arnold does not make that pass to Henderson. Instead, he moves back and passes back to Salah. However, again, because of his wide positioning, Salah is in space and can drop in, receive and pass to Naby Keita, who is on the opposite side of the pitch. Again, note how Liverpool are able to make all of these moves come off without AC Milan getting close to them in terms of pressing. Once the ball is moved on to Navigator, as we will see, again note the yellow circles which denote the AC Milan defenders and how narrow the AC Milan back four is. A big reason for this is Henderson's positioning, because he takes up a spot between the Milan left back and left-sided centre-back, forcing them to stay narrow, and this means that Alexander-Arnold is once again in the space down the right-hand side. Keita takes a shot here which is blocked, but had he put his head up, he could have passed to Alexander-Arnold. Again, a key feature of Liverpool's play was their rotations down the right, as we saw earlier. This was also happening in their build-up phase as well. Over here, we can see Liverpool's back four, but what's interesting is that it's Jordan Henderson who's dropped into play as the right back, with Alexander-Arnold playing more of a midfield position at this moment in time. Henderson passes the ball to Alexander-Arnold in that central position and then makes a run forward here. He then receives the ball back from Alexander-Arnold and can pass it to an unmarked Mohamed Salah, who has also moved in field. It's quite clear from these images that these three players were constantly rotating their positions between wide on the flank and a little more central. All three players were capable enough to play in all three positions. Another example over here, which was right in the build-up to Liverpool's first goal. Once again, Henderson is in a central position. He makes a run wide out from inside to outside to the right flank. Alexander-Arnold passes to Mohamed Salah over here. As that pass is made, Henderson's movement draws away a Milan player. And what that does is that it creates the room for Alexander-Arnold to then run into, as we can see over here. Because Henderson is playing out wide, it's drawn the Milan player out towards him, with Theo Hernandez also staying wide to counter Mohamed Salah and Rafael Leao trying to track Alexander-Arnold. We can see the gap that has already opened up in the Milan defence. Salah passes the ball into Alexander-Arnold's path, who gets away from Rafael Leao quite easily, motors into the box, and then tries to cross to Diogo Jota, but his cross takes a nasty deflection of Fikayo Tomori and loops into the net for Liverpool's opening goal. This was a perfect example of how Liverpool's rotations worked down the right, and as mentioned, Trent Alexander-Arnold played a huge role in Liverpool's game. A good idea for comparison here is to look at Trent Alexander-Arnold's touch map against Andy Robertson's touch map, Liverpool's right back. We can see here that Alexander-Arnold had far more touches in central areas than Robertson. Robertson was providing the width almost exclusively on the left flank, whereas on the right, it was almost a shared job between Alexander-Arnold, Henderson and Salah. We've seen this already with Alexander-Arnold earlier this season, and it's going to continue as well. Milan's poor structure also contributed to Liverpool's dominance. Over here, we can see Milan trying to build out from the back. They've gone into a back three shape with Kessie dropping into the back three. Ismail Benacer, the other central midfielder, is the sort of lone pivot here, while there are three Milan players in a straight line ahead of the Liverpool block as well. But it's quite clear from this image that Liverpool have blocked off all central passing options here, and Milan are forced to go wide. They could have tried to build up in a 3-2 shape rather than a 3-1 shape here. Another example here, but this is more off the ball, where Milan's poor positioning of their players and the way that, for example, on the right hand side, we can see that Sandro Tonali and Brahim Diaz are quite close to each other rather than being spread out, and this allows Joe Gomez the space to be able to pass quite easily to Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is in oceans of space in midfield, because Frank Kessie is having to cover Henderson, who is central. Again, poor spacing and poor positioning from the Milan midfield can be seen over here. This is an example of Milan's poor pressing. Their front two over here is not doing a good job because they're not pressing the Liverpool central defenders, and neither are they cutting off central passing options. It's quite easy for Joe Gomez to pass into Navigator, who then moves the ball along to Fabinho. Fabinho can pass back easily to Joel Matip, and then Matip plays a pass out to Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is again in space. This therefore shows how easy it was for Liverpool to play out from the back. The two Milan forwards here should ideally be using their bodies to provide a cover shadow so that the Liverpool centre-halves can't play easy passes into midfield, but they fail to do so here. Now let's have a look at both of AC Milan's goals. For the first goal, Jordan Henderson should be pressing Brahim Diaz. He gives him the time and space to be able to play the pass into Alexis Saelemaekers, who is in space between Naby Keita and Fabinho. The twin runs being made by Ante Rebic and Rafael Leao force the Liverpool centre-backs to drop, and this, in conjunction with Henderson's failure to press, means that Fabinho has to come across to cover. This gives Saelemaekers space in the central midfield area, with Keita also getting back to cover. And this was the cardinal sin that Liverpool committed in this area of the pitch right before the equaliser. Diaz is able to advance up the pitch and play a pass into Rafael Leao. Joel Matip is again caught in a quandary as to whether to press Saelemaekers or cover Ante Rebic's run. He fails to do either. Also note that Trent Alexander-Arnold is also caught up the pitch from his right back position. Rafael Leao is then able to play a simple ball in behind the Liverpool defence for Rebic to run onto. Alexander-Arnold has not got back to cover. Matip has been drawn across towards Leao as well, and this means that Rebic is therefore free in the box to fire a shot right beyond Alisson and bring AC Milan on level terms. This is the second goal that Milan scored. Again, comes from Liverpool's right-hand side. Alexander-Arnold is once again caught up the pitch. He's behind the play. As Leao dribbles towards goal, two runs are made once again, with Rebic going on the outside, Saelemaekers going on the inside. Once again, Matip is left with a decision to make over here. He decides this time to stick and try and block the pass towards Rebic. He does manage to do so to an extent, but it bounces off him and plays Rebic in through on goal as well, and it has the added sort of disadvantage that had Rebic been offside, it wouldn't have been called offside because it had hit Matip on the way through as well. Again, Fabinho fails to get the tackle in. Matip is trying to cover the pass here, but he fails to do so, and therefore when Rebic gets into the box and squares to Theo Hernandez can take a shot on goal. With Andy Robertson getting back, he does manage to block the shot, but Brahim Diaz comes in and scores. In conclusion, what we can say is that Liverpool were the better side on the night. They absolutely dominated the first half, especially the first 15 to 20 minutes, but they made some errors in midfield, and at the Champions League level, this will come back and bite you, as we saw with Milan scoring two quick goals. However, Milan as an overall team structure was not good enough, and to be honest, Liverpool could have easily scored more. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel for more tactical content from across the Champions League, Premier League, and the other big European leagues. Thank you so much. See you next time.